And now it is my pleasure to introduce a sponsor session created by HP, and it's called Connecting the Dots, Lessons from the Underground. Please welcome Rob Roy, Federal Chief Technology Officer of HP Enterprise Security. Rob, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us today. This is an exciting topic for me, even though I see a lot of sullen, depressed individuals in the audience this morning. And why is that? So we've heard things like, we enable civilization, right? We don't just power and lights, we enable civilization. What happens when we lose electricity? Well, I can live probably a week or two without my electricity, but I can't live more than a few days without this. These are important topics, and as I'm reminded by my children last night, as I'm preparing for this presentation, life is unfair. As I proceed to pour a little treat into two little bowls for them of Skittles, one gets 10, the other gets 9. How do I know? I'm not counting them. Dad, it's unfair. He got 10 and I got 9. And that's such a teachable moment, right? Life is unfair. And we understand that. So today, connecting the dots. This term was brought to the public consciousness as a result of September 11, 2001, when we reflected upon the challenges of connecting dots in a community where there was lots of information being streamed in, and people needed to collaborate. And I couldn't have set it up any better than what I just heard from Meg up here and from my friend from Fidelis asking about threat sharing. So connecting the dots. We learned about it back then, and we realized that life is unfair. How unfair is it that we should spend hundreds of billions of dollars per year on defense and security, and yet some actors with a seemingly infinitesimal budget are able to bring down parts of our economic system and bring down billions of dollars worth of real estate? How is it, more to today's topic, that we should spend approximately $80 billion per year on defense in cybersecurity, and yet the current estimates are that we're losing north of $500 billion? So let's talk about ideas. I'm not here to pitch a product. I am from HP. I focus on our public sector business here in Washington, D.C., and in the state and local community. Now, one of the incidents you would have heard, it's very easy for people to stand up and take pot shots at the government. Hey, I'm in the government arena. I'm not going to point at anybody within the government arena that is challenged with cybersecurity problems. So let's go back just a couple of years. I'm using this one example that everybody could probably relate to. 2 years ago, there was a worldwide attack on the banking system based on 2 Middle Eastern banks that had been infiltrated, and information was not necessarily stolen from those banks. It was changed. What was changed? Account balances and withdrawal limits on certain prepaid debit cards. What was done with those? On a global basis in 27 countries, over 100 actors proceeded to attack ATMs and pull money out of them to the tune of $45 million in 10 hours. That is coordination. That is collaboration. What's important about this is the people that performed this didn't know each other, nor did they trust one another. They were all criminals. How do they do that? That's the question to ask. We've released 2 reports that I'm here to announce today. One on the cost of cybercrime, and it is accelerating. We've found that the cost of cybercrime just in the U.S. has accelerated over 20% this year. Last year it was a little north of 10%, to over $15 million on an annualized basis per organization that receives some of these breaches. You'll see Germany and Japan, it looks like it might have gone down, the blue numbers, but that's just due to currency fluctuations. They've actually gone up as well. Another area is focused specifically on the state and local and federal government market. We did a study to figure out where are they complementary and where are they different. And in this chart, we just show a little bit about the fact that some of the organizations in this bell curve, 6 to 10 material breaches at the federal and the state and local level at 37% and 34%. What I think is interesting here is the extreme honesty of the people on the right-hand side that admitted to more than 25 breaches, and the seeming unknowingness of the people on the left-hand side of this who said, we haven't had a breach. If you heard earlier, it's not if, it's when. It's when you're going to find out that you've received a breach, and I have a chart on that. Here's some dots to connect. I found this one online, which talks about what happens in any cybersecurity breach, and I think it's instructive for everybody, from the lowest technician to the CEO. What happens during a breach? How do they get in? Once they're in, what do they do? And then how long does it take to find them? The first one is, from the initial attack, where an organization has been targeted, how long does it take to get in? More than 85% of the time, it takes under an hour. To the point earlier from, I believe it was Doug from Pepco, if you want to get into an organization today, you can go download some tools. They're not even $100. You can download some for free. And you can get into a lot of organizations. Not every organization. The government is more protected than most. I will admit that. But on average, for these breaches that were analyzed, 85% of them under an hour. Now, how long does it take to find them once they're in the network? On average, it's over 200 days to find them. That is about 83% of the time it takes months to find the attacker inside your network. And guess what? Typically, you don't find your own attackers. You're informed by a third party like the FBI, who is doing some other investigation, and then they'll go in and let you know that you've been breached. So over 200 days. And then what are they doing, connecting those dots? What are they doing while they're in that entire time? They're stealing all the data. 92% of the data is stolen before you ever find out. All right. So I'm here today to talk about a couple of things that I did hear flowing into this. The challenges that we have today are not that we can't share information, that it can't happen at the speed of light. It's the inefficiencies of what we're doing and the massive amount of information we are receiving in cybersecurity that we have to sift through and analyze and figure out, what is this information and how do I find those needles in a haystack? Part of that is understanding what is threat intelligence. Now, I know this is an eye chart. I'll just explain. The left-hand side of this is something we call strategic intelligence. It's what our government does a lot of, where there's a lot of human interaction and there's brain power to look for trends and look for thoughts and ideas and context within data. And on the right-hand side, it's the data. It's the machine-to-machine, sharing indicators of compromise so that one organization can share it with another organization. That facilitates that strategic intelligence and the ability for one another to communicate about threats. We're not doing a good job of this today. However, somebody is. Now this, as you can imagine, is the bad guy. This is not a mock-up. I'm going to show you a few charts from an underground message board. HP is in a security research community, and we do work alongside of our peers and also the government around trying to find what are the actors doing out there. In this case, you'll see it's page 1 of 86. In the need to organize and specialize. What these folks are doing are collaborating amongst themselves, people who never even see one another, sort of like when you go on eBay and you buy something. They've got a marketplace up here, and that marketplace is self-regulating. They've got their own identities, their own reputations, their own credibility. And in this case, it says, need USA cashiers ASAP, and there's several pages of those. Or need in-store workers. What do you suppose they need cashiers in the United States for? perhaps to grab a little USB dongle from them and slap it into a cash register before they go home at night, so that information could be siphoned off of that cash register when people are coming through and running their credit cards through the system. So they organize and they specialize in these communities, and they're really good at what they do. Another thing that they do is they don't trust each other, so they have things like reputation. If you try and get into one of these boards, you're going to fail miserably. You're going to have a reputation of 0. Nobody's ever going to talk to you, if you can even find the board. It's really hard to find them. I think Megan talked about the dark web earlier, and that's where information like this is. And then they monetize. They have ways, much like eBay, where if products are exchanged online, they use money like Bitcoin, right, cryptocurrency, to exchange funds, and they'll use escrow services to place products out there, usually illicit products that you can't find at the local Walmart, and they'll escrow it, and they'll wait for the money to come in. Then they do the exchange between the two. These are the bad guys. This is how they're operating today. They're highly organized. They're very collaborative. And what do we learn from them? There's lots of things to learn. They collaborate. They've got credibility. They've got their systems set up in a way that gives them an advantage, what I would consider an unfair advantage. And I don't like it when we have unfair advantages in the world of cyber. So our idea is to learn from what they're doing and to turn the tables back on them. So how do we do that? Well, the U.S. government is part of this and has created some infrastructure and tools over the last several years out of the Department of Homeland Security, standards, as I heard James say earlier, in sticks and taxi. You don't have to know what those terms are. They're a mechanism for organizations to exchange threat information. So we have created something called HP Threat Central, which enables this kind of fluidity of the exchange of information, allows multiple organizations to participate in it, ensuring privacy of the utmost. This is sort of what it looks like. It's communities that come together, fed by threat intelligence by both the government and the private sector, but allowing communities to participate in it, like the information sharing and analysis centers. What does it look like? Well, this is one of those kind of animations we'll go through quickly. I heard a 0 day. So let's say you have 3 companies, A, B, and C, and they're all connected to a system like this. Company A receives a 0 day, figures it out, and they submit that 0 day into a centralized cloud-based threat sharing service like Threat Central. Threat Central receives it, learns about that 0 day, analyzes it to that analysis point, figures out exactly what it is, and then sends the solution out to company B and C so they can start protecting themselves in near real time. That's the challenge that we have today, is that we're sending around Word documents and PowerPoint and spreadsheets of threats, and that doesn't work. We can't do it quick enough. So company B gets something like a new piece of malware. They put it into the system, and the malware gets sent out to the other companies. Likewise, with maybe a new Zeus botnet or something, a malicious IP address goes into it, and that gets shared out. It's about us as a community to protect ourselves and be able to communicate amongst ourselves. So with that, we talked about what's happening during the breach, how quickly these happen, how long it takes to find it, and then what's being done in the middle of all of that. We did talk about the fact that there's a lot of breaches happening at both the federal and the state and local level. And the costs are accelerating on us. How do we change that? We have to collaborate. We have to share information, and we have to be able to do it seamlessly. That will allow all of us to connect the dots. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Margaret.